Top 5 most ruthless killers in American Mafia history. We're counting down from 5 all the way to number 1. And remember, so like and subscribe because nobody's giving you content like this except me, serious silliness outcast, John Livia. Here we go. Number 5. Also known as the Grim Reaper, his name was Greg Scarpa. That's right. This man was so ruthless that they called him the Grim Reaper. He was born in 1929 in Brooklyn, New York, and he was working for the Colombo crime family since the 1950s. Loan sharking, extortion, drug trafficking, racketeering, murder, however he could to climb up the scale and become a captain in the Colombo crime family. But he was arrested early on in the 1960s. And he actually cut a deal with the feds. And he had 2 things to do. He had to give them information, and so it was said that he was a informant for the FBI for 30 years, but he also had to do a favor for the FBI. It was referred to as the Mississippi Burning Killings. The FBI could not find out who these 3 social activists were buried after the Klansmen, Ku Klux Klan, actually killed them. So they sent Greg Scarpa down there to use his knowledge and skills to find out where these bodies were buried and who killed them. It is said that he kidnapped and tortured several members of the Ku Klux Klan in order to get information and find out where those bodies were buried. And he did find out where those bodies were buried and who did it. After that, Greg Scarpa had carte blanche in the streets of New York. He has been said to be tied to as many as 50 murders. Unfortunately, Greg Scarpa met his end in 1994 when he died of AIDS complications. Number 4, Anthony Gaspipe Caso. They called him Gaspipe because that was his favorite weapon to use. He was responsible for 36 murders. He climbed all the way up to the Lucchese crime family as the underboss. He actually bribed 2 police officers and used them as hitmen and informants to tell them who was an actual informant against the Lucchese crime family. In 1990, he was indicted on 67 criminal counts, and he actually plotted to kill a federal judge and a federal prosecutor during that time. He hated informants so much that he tried killing an informant and his sister just because she was there. Both of them actually survived the murder attempts. Except in the mid-1990s, he pleaded guilty to 72 criminal counts, and he got 455 years in prison. Anthony Caso died in December of 2020 in prison due to COVID-19. Number 3, Harry Strauss. Harry Strauss, born in 1909, was a member of Murder, Inc. Murder, Inc. was a group of Italian and Jewish men that were hired contract killers exclusively for the commission, the Italian American Mafia. It was said that he enjoyed his work so much that he would volunteer to go out of state to kill because he liked killing so much. He never carried a weapon on him. Wherever he was that he needed to kill somebody, he actually scouted for the weapon there, and he became very creative. So he would use guns, knives if he found it, ice picks, axes, pipes. He strangled people. He drowned people, and he would even bury people alive. Really, really creative when it came to killing. He was arrested 18 times, but never convicted until Abe Relis, who was another member of Murder, Inc., turned state's evidence and gave up information on Harry Strauss and several other members of Murder, Inc. But here's the best part. Harry Strauss, during his trial, tried to plead insanity, and he came to court with a long beard, mumbling incoherently. He would stop bathing, and he would actually chew on his lawyer's briefcase handle while in trial. Fortunately, it didn't work. They saw right through it, and he was sentenced to death, and he died of the electric chair. In 1941, he was sentenced to death in Sing Sing, where he was in prison, to a very famous electric chair called Old Sparky. That was December of 1941. Number 2, Roy DeMayo. Roy DeMayo was born in 1940. After dropping out of school, he actually was a butcher's assistant and this skill would help him in the mafia life later on. So he started out working for the Lucchese crime family. He was a loan shark. He would do racketeering, extortion, so on and so forth. But it caught the attention of a captain of the Gambino crime family. His name was Anthony Gacci. So Gacci actually convinced him to join the Gambino, saying that he would make a lot more money. So during this time, he was continuing doing loan sharking and hustling and making money. But finally, in 1973, Gacci actually ordered a murder for DeMayo to do. Gacci had a business associate named Paul Rothenberg, who was a pornographer. Back in the 1970s, pornography was a huge business for organized crime to get involved with. There were XXX theaters all over New York City. But apparently, Gacci found out that Rothenberg was actually talking to authorities. So he had DeMayo kill him. Supposedly, DeMayo actually shot him in the head in Long Island. Well, that was his intro to killing. And then what had happened was he had developed this murder strategy, which was really impressive for the time. They called this murder strategy the Gemini method. Now, this is why they call it the Gemini method. He owned a bar called the Gemini Lounge. And what he would do is he would lure victims into this back room in the Gemini Lounge. And he would need another 2 crew members to help. So this is how the method worked. He'd lure somebody in. He would shoot him in the head with a silencer, a silenced gun rather. And then another crew member would come out, stab him in the chest, while another crew member would actually wrap a towel around the bullet wound. So he would stab him in the heart, wrap the towel around the bullet wound, and this would stop the blood flow. Then they would dump the body into a bathtub, unwrap the bullet wound, and let the body bleed out. Now, this would take some time. So during this time, they would play cards, they would sit around and talk, they would order Chinese food, and they would actually just hang out until the blood had almost completely flowed out of the body into the plumbing pipes. Then they would take the body and they would actually chop the body up into pieces, box the body into separate cardboard boxes, and then ship the boxes of dead people's body parts to a local garbage dump. That is the Gemini method. It is said he had killed between 100 and 200 people. Nobody knows exactly, but 100 is the low number I've heard, and it could be almost 200. Roy DeMayo actually met his death in the same way he was murdered. He was actually killed by Anthony Gacci, and the murder was ordered by Paul Castellano, who was the head of the Gambino crime family at the time. Supposedly, he looked at Roy DeMayo as a loose end and didn't want him around any longer for whatever reason, and Gacci actually had to kill DeMayo himself. My number one pick for most ruthless killer in mafia history is Tommy Karate. His real name was Tommy Patera. He was born in 1954 in Brooklyn, New York. He actually was elevated all the way to captain in the Bonanno crime family. Before Tommy Karate was even 40 years old, he was known to have killed 60 people. He would keep souvenirs of these people, which to me sounds more like a serial killer than a killer for the mafia. He would keep jewelry, rings, necklaces, wedding bands of the people that he actually killed. It was said that he would walk into his club and even the members of his crew would never turn their back on him. That's how much they feared him. If you knew too much about his personal life, you were killed. If you were even the slightest suspected of you being an informant, you were killed. He actually killed a woman named Phyllis Birdie because this woman was present while his wife overdosed and died. He shot her in her sleep and then dismembered her. He had a crew member named Frank Ganji. So one day, Frank Ganji actually walks in and finds Tommy Karate in a bathtub, naked, dismembering a body who was supposed to be an informant. After that, Frank Ganji was actually arrested for drunk driving, and odds are probably in fear of his own life because he did see Patera actually do that. He decided to turn state's evidence. He gave up atomic karate. Frank Ganchi got 10 years, but atomic karate is serving a life sentence and still is in jail to this day. Well, I hope you liked my top 5 most ruthless killers in mafia history. If you think I forgot anybody, mention it in the description. If you think that there was somebody more ruthless, then let me know. Until then, remember, like and subscribe and wait till the next one because we got great content coming up.